Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the third meeting of the Fall 24 Rome Talk. I'm particularly happy to be here tonight because I'm usually traveling, and so finally I'm here to enjoy tonight's session, which actually it's a first time. It's a different type of event for the Rome Center. But first of all, I really want to thank all the students who are here tonight, because usually we meet at a different time of the day, and I really appreciate your presence tonight here. And the other reason why I'm particularly happy, because for the first time, actually, since we've been here, the music is entering back in Palazzo Taverna, in what used to be, back then, the ballroom of this palace. So this room has been used for this type of events for many, many years. So I just want to say thank you for being here. I will turn the stage to my colleague Laura, who is the coordinator of the lecture series. And obviously, I want to thank in advance our guest tonight, the Officina Filarmonica, that Laura will be presenting in a minute.
Good evening, everybody. I join Francesco Bedeschi in thanking the students, especially for the Italian cultural class, because this evening we're particularly grasping the music to the Italian culture. And also Consuelo Lollobrigida will be explaining how traveling, playing music in Italy, it's really an important experience that you are somehow following up in the footsteps with your presence here. So the three pieces that are going to be played this evening will be coming from repertoires of Vivaldi, probably one of the most renowned artists for Italian music. And you will learn about the fortune of these artists later on in our little discussion, probably after the piece is going to be played. Then we have Mozart. More than Mozart probably explains in itself the wonderful experience in his very short life of being able to travel, to learn from other countries, and especially from Italy. And then Haydn, that also was, as many other musicians have to say, in love with Italy, of course. So we have this evening Lodovico Bertuzzi, Rocco Sbardella, and Lucia Casinelli. They're going to play in this trio selection. So I guess you're going to play and then stop for the, how would you like to?
I would like to introduce the Grand Tour first.
Okay, very good.
Say a couple of things about Vivaldi.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
We're going to make connections with Haydn and Mozart.
Perfect. And then we will have Consuelo Lollobrigida that is going to moderate by giving insight about the Grand Tour, which is one of the many fields of expertise that she has. And so she's going to talk about this from the art history point of view. Okay, so let's leave the stage to music and enjoy. And once again, thanks for being here tonight.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here with my colleagues of Officina Filarmonica, and a big thank you to the University of Arkansas. My name is Rocco Sbardella, and I'm the musical director of Officina Filarmonica. And I'll talk to you about Officina Filarmonica a bit later. For the moment, I wanted to introduce you to something that you may already be aware of, and that's the Grand Tour. What is the Grand Tour? It was a common practice for aristocrats of Northern Europe to travel around Europe, and mainly through Italy, in order to see something that was completely different from their culture, right? Of course, a noble gentleman who grew up in Northern Germany was completely unaware of what was the life in Italy, such a very bright and solar country, a place where the sun was shining all the time compared to the cloudy Germany, right? But that, of course, had also an influence on the way art was produced, on the way people would experience life generally. So the big cultural difference was very appealing for all the aristocrats coming and traveling. The Grand Tour was something not only restricted to Italy, of course, it was European. It involved France, it involved Spain, sometimes very little, but a lot of Italy and also England. The musicians that we're going to that we're going to encounter tonight, had a big relationship with Italy in direct or indirect way. Mozart, for example, had his Grand Tour in Italy. Haydn never had a Grand Tour, but has had such a great influence from Italian music and composers. And we're going to see how this happened. But we wanted to begin with Vivaldi. Why Vivaldi? Because Vivaldi, first of all, is one of the most important composers of the Baroque period, of the Italian Baroque, which was completely different from the German Baroque. Music, we know that Italy for music has been always where things started. The use of polyphony started in Italy, then it was taken by Northern Europe. The new feeling of a lighter music began in Italy and then became something that was important, became crucial in the classical period. That's why we're going to look at Haydn and Mozart as representatives of the first Viennese school, comparing them with Vivaldi and how Vivaldi had an influence on them, also if indirect, but just through his music. Both composers, Haydn and Mozart, did have a contact with Vivaldi somehow through their teachers and also through the performance of their music. We're going to start with the concerto, a chamber concerto in D major by Vivaldi. It was originally written for flute, violin, and for the continuo. We couldn't have the continuo here for many reasons. The continuo is a group of instruments playing. It's generally the harpsichord. You know what a harpsichord is? Anyone knows what? Okay, good. And the cello. Well, where the cello would just play the bass line and the harpsichord would fill the gap between the bass line and the melody on top using chords, most of the times through improvisation. We're going to have this time a very strange instrument that you see here. This is a bass clarinet, which a friend of mine from France always calls claricello, because the sound of the bass clarinet is very, very deep and resembles somehow the low-stringed instruments. Concerto. Why a concerto? Because it's probably the form that was mostly developed by Vivaldi, and that had a great influence on the music, on the structures and the musical forms of the classical period. A concerto is generally divided in 3 movements. A movement in music is a section, okay, that has its own essence, and it usually follows a scheme of fast, slow, fast. So I want to ask you, first of all, to not clap in between movements. So know that you have to clap after the 3rd movement. What is important, though, that I'll challenge you on this. I want you to notice the repetition. Okay, when we talk about musical composition, generally, there are 3 driving principles that have been guiding composers since the Middle Ages, and those 3 principles are repetition, variation, and contrast. The Baroque concerto that was then perfected by Vivaldi features at a very, very high level these 3 elements. There's a repetition, there's a variation, and then there's a contrast. So I want you to notice when The main theme is repeated, and what changes in between the repetitions. Okay, this is a particular form originated in Italy called the ritornello form. Okay, the slow movement will be an adagio, so very, very slow, but very lyrical. And then we're going to have a third movement, which is, again, an allegro, which follows a through composed structure. Okay, I hope you enjoy. Did you hear the repetition? I hope so. Huh? It was very coherent throughout, because also in the last movement, you could hear the same rhythmical and melodic figure that was in the first movement. So this is a big conquer for a big point in favor of the coherence of music. If you think of music of the Renaissance, for example, where everything was very, very separated. There was no line that would connect the music. Each piece was a piece on its own. Now we start looking at music through a thematic coherence. The ritornello form had a great influence on the development of another form, which is the queen of the forms, I would say, in the classical period, the sonata form. Now, I don't want to be boring with technical things, but the fact that you heard in the ritornello form main theme that was then alternated with episodes that were different, were at a different tempo, were at a different key, that had a strong influence on the development of this form, which is the form in which all the symphonies, the sonatas, the concertos from Haydn and going on up to Mahler and Strauss are written. You have two main themes, a first theme, a second theme, contrasting in character, and then you have the development of these themes, sometimes very short, sometimes longer, and then at the end, a recapitulation. And there's always a repeat of the first section that we call exposition. And the master of the sonata form was Franz Joseph Haydn. He learned this. He didn't learn the sonata form, he kind of developed it, but he was inspired in developing the sonata form, first of all, by listening to Scarlatti. Scarlatti was an Italian pianist, composer, harpsichord player as well, but also by studying the scores of Vivaldi. He never left, he left Austria, of course he did, but he never came to Italy. So his contact with Italy is very indirect. He learned music, though he studied music in Vienna with Nicola Porpora. Nicola Porpora was one of the most important composers and teachers of counterpoint of the time. And through him, he got in touch with the Italian style. We can definitely say that the influence of the Italian music on German, Austrian, and let's say Northern composers goes in two directions. One is the direction of form and structure, which is very rigid. It's very academic. Composers of the classical period will not leave that form. Also, if you think of Beethoven, who can be probably considered one of the proto-romantic composers, but he is still very, very rooted in the classical forms and structure. His symphonies, although are absolutely mind-blowing when it comes to harmony and to timbre, but in terms of form, they stick with the classical form of the sonata form. Okay, so this is one element. The other element that, though, had a big influence is the lightness and the simplicity of the melodic logos. Okay, and in fact, this is very, very clear in the piece by Haydn that we're going to play for you, which is a divertimento. So it's not a big, important piece, but it's very, very symbolic, and the sonata form is realized in the perfect way. And also you can hear this lightness in the melody that is not so explosive as we heard in Vivaldi, but it's not that heavy like the German counterpoint that he anyway studied. Okay, so if we think of Bach, who is absolutely great, and we love playing Bach and listening to Bach, but it's mathematics at a point. It becomes very tricky to understand what he wants to say through the music. Well, for Haydn, it was very simple because he embraces this very simple view of the melody with an accompaniment. Okay, thank you so much. following a little bit of the chronological order, we are now landing on Mozart, who actually came to Italy. He came to Italy when he was 14 years old, so that would be around 1770. He was born in 1756, died in 1791. Not a long life, unfortunately, but he came to Italy when he was 14. He experimented directly the beauty of Italian music. He studied a little bit with Padre Martini from Bologna, who was a very important scholar, who also introduced him to the Accademia Filarmonica di Modena, and here he became an academic at the age of 14. He also met a lot of opera composers, and he was commissioned operas while he was in Italy. And that was, of course, a big source of income for him, because traveling was expensive anyway. But can we imagine Mozart not writing Notte di Figaro, Don Giovanni, Così fan tutte, without knowing Italian music? It would have been impossible. It's the Italian trilogy. So the style of the opera buffa mainly really remained with him. The use of the recitative, the use of a very dynamic, almost spoken recitative, which will lead then into his Singspiel. The magic flute is a Singspiel, so where there's not only recitative and arias, but also acting. Okay, so this shows how the Italian style kind of blended with the German tradition. And actually, I think that the first Viennese school would not exist, or would have been so successful, without meeting the Italian culture. If we only think of the concerti that Mozart wrote for solo instruments, the fact that he uses the harp and the flute, he uses the clarinet, he explored those timbres which were typically German through the lenses of the Italian beauty of the melody. If you listen to Mozart, you can remember all the melodies. If we listen to a symphony by Mozart for a couple of hours, you'll be whistling the main theme of the exposition of a symphony. This is because he took this very important element from the Italian culture and the Italian musical tradition and blended it with the German and Austrian tradition. Of course, also taking also elements from France and so on. But the Italian element is very, very strong in Mozart's music. He was 14 when he came to Italy, and he learned a lot. So it was a very, very important moment. As for Haydn, though, Mozart didn't take only the beauty, but also the structural strictness of the form. In fact, in this divertimento that we will play, which was originally written for 3 clarinets, actually 3 basset horns. We all know that Mozart was affiliated to Masonry, and the basset horn, which is a very typical German clarinet, was one of the instruments that was most used in the reunions of the Masonry. This trio was originally written for 3 basset horns. We have this arrangement which absolutely fits the purpose. We're going to hear again a sonata form and again an adagio, but the last movement is a rondo. Okay, so the rondo takes a lot from the ritornello form. Okay, if we label each section of the ritornello form and of the rondo, we will have the same thing with the same structure. We'll always have A, B, A, C, A, D, and so on. Okay, The difference is that while in the ritornello form, the main theme is always repeated, but never as exactly as the same except for the end, so it modulates to different keys or it uses fragments. In the rondo form, the main theme is repeated every time with the same key, with the same structure, okay? I hope that you enjoyed and that you will continue enjoying the concert tonight, and just enjoy Mozart. Thank you.
By the way, I would like to thank Fabio for his very valuable help, because this evening without him, before leaving the stage to some questions, and I was very happy to see the students listening to that. And I think that we always forget that when this music came out, it was very modern and it was very rock. And I said that this music really moved me so much in this room. And I felt all the efforts of those young individuals working hard to change their times with the means of their art. So really thank you for this opportunity. Consuelo will make just a few, like points about what the Grand Tour was in a broader sense, also for the art, in a very, very, short outline, and then prepare some questions if you want, because not every day you can have musicians when you can ask questions, in also with such an important historical background, I would say.
Well, thank you, Laura. Well, coming along this wonderful music that, as Laura said, is very moving. Is pretty hard. So thank you for your commitment and your passion, because music as art is a matter of passion first. Thank you to the students for coming here today, because actually this has been a very long day for some of you. We just really woke up very early this morning to follow up the presidential election. So thank you, and thank you everyone for organizing these talks, and of course to Fabio, without whom all these technical support wouldn't be possible. So very, very briefly, I want to highlight some aspects that you have done so well. So just we are pilgrims who seek. We are all pilgrims who seek Italy. And so this is a very iconic painting from the end of the 1700s. It's gone, and where you see two men lighting the Colosseum, which right in that time became one of the most important icon of the city of Rome and of Italy as a cultural cradle of the Western civilization. Well, just to point out a few aspects already covered by, I'm sorry. So, this is a map of Europe, circa 1700, and the Grand Tour was started from, most of the times from England, and passed through either Germany or France to head into Italy, where this was pretty much the political subdivisions of Italy by 1796, just after the French Revolution and all the changings that the French Revolution brought to all Europe. Well, first of all, preparing the Grand Tour was something the elites and the aristocrats used to do in order to seek and to look for a different horizon in their educational curriculum. So first of all, the Grand Tour had to be prepared, and they had to prepare carefully the itinerary. The word tour comes from the Latin turnus, which means a tool, a circle, a turner's wheel. Therefore, a tourist, as we are accustomed to see every day around us, is a person who undertakes a cultural trip and ultimately comes back to the place from he sets or she sets about his/her journey. So this is probably the most interesting map, where we can see the red line, which is pretty much the itinerary these people used to undertake. And as you can see, they passing from border between France and Germany, you can see that the political boundaries or the political definition of the countries were, of course, pretty much different than nowadays, and so they, through the pass, the Brenner Pass, they arrived to Venice, and then Venice, Ferrara, Bologna, Florence, Pisa, some cities through Tuscany, such as Siena, most of the times Rome, and they headed at Naples. Sometimes they could go rather further south to Sicily, but it happened not very often. So in the preparation, we included the reading of the classics. So we have talked about, you know, the backgrounds and the cultural backgrounds and music, but also, you know, these people who undertook the itinerary, the voyage, the tour, most of the times had to read or read Horace, Virgil, Juvenal, Manilius, Ovid, and Seneca. And yeah, you see the tour they actually did. London, either Brussels, Berlin, Munich, Vienna, Venice, sometimes Sicily, and back Naples, Rome, Florence, Turin, Geneva, Paris, back Calais, and back to London. There was also another grand tour, which included, as you can see, the circumnavigations of the Atlantic Sea, the passing of the Hercules columns, so the border between Spain and North of Africa, and led them to Egypt and towards the Ottoman Empire, which was the most challenging and also the most risky. This is, for instance, the map of the Grand Tour taken by William Beckford, and was an English lord in 1780, so from London to Naples. That is the one I highlighted in the previous slide. They could either take a carriage, walk, or taking a ship. So this is how, you know, they were preparing the map to the tour. Well, by ship, I think this is very interesting. The travelers can take a ship from Marseille, Genoa, or Ostia, nearby Naples, Rome to Naples. And the duration of the trips depends upon the weather. So Harry Swinburne's journey from Marseille to Naples took 12 days in 1776, and the trip from Ostia can be completed in 24 hours when the weather was fine. Going from Ostia to Naples, the passenger ship cost about 5 crowns, board included. Okay, or they could also do it on foot. This is a very fun etching from George Keating, Manner of Passing the Mount Cenis, August 1755. And there was a series of drawings he made during his grand tour from 1754 to 1756. And well, of course, these people most of the time didn't travel alone, but they had kind of house courts which followed them. There was also a way to do it by carriage. So there was a direct road connecting Rome to Naples, and the journey of more than 200 kilometers, so kind of 110 miles, took at least 2 days. But of course, along the way, the travelers could stop and visit other cities. And so this way, to reach Naples, they could take up to between 5 and 7 days. Likely the main road to Naples, it was reasonably good. I'm quote unquote some letters and memoirs written after the Grand Tour. So here there are, however, only a few inns to stop and change horses, and change horses could cost 16 carlini, which was the currency in Naples and the Kingdom of south of Italy, per pair at the post stations, and they could have 3 carlini for the postilion. Roads leading to the countryside are in bad condition, and for navigating the narrow curvy streets, a 2-wheeled gig drawn by 1 horse is the most convenient vehicle, but often the roads are only passable by horse or even by mule. Why did I choose Italy? Growing of the cult of antique times. I just remember that the city of Pompeii was discovered in the first half of the 1700s. So until the time, the antique stuff were visible either in Rome or in Sicily. So Pompeii was something which was discovered because of the Grand Tour. The second reason why was the warmth of the South. Most of the people, such as we're talking of the pre-romantic musicians, thinks of Keats and Shelley, they came came to Italy because they had to recover by pneumonia. And so the doctors suggested them to go to the south because of the different weather condition would have helped them to recover soon. And that actually worked pretty well. Then they died for other reasons. There were no wars. Just remember that at the beginning of the 1700s, there were the 7-Year Wars, which was a devastating war in the north of Europe, and that causing a lot of turmoils, uprisings, and actually also the civilians were affected. And then, of course, the love for cities. So the cities, they were stopping by Milan. Milan was one of the first cities to have an opera theater, and where Mozart stopped, and had one of his first concerts. And then they were attracted, as most of the Americans still nowadays are attracted by Como Lake and the beauty of its villas. Well, here we go. So the Opera Theater in Milan was opened on August the 3rd of 1778. And the first opera to be performed was Salieri's Europa Riconosciuta. Salieri and Mozart have a tight and conflictual relation. This would be over you. This is the journey, Mozart's journey to Milan. And what else? Let's see. Of course, you are talking about the Rondò. So when me as an art historian, when I hear the music, of course, but these words recalls me Canaletto's and Vanvitelli's view and the importance of Venice as a cultural pole of attraction all along the 17th and the 1800s. And still nowadays, Venice is a city, which is included in the grand tour of any tourist, especially coming from the Anglophone countries. And it is Venice, which was important both for the very living life conditions and standard, and was an attraction was the carnival. And so the students during the spring section, when they come here, one of the things they want to do is to come to Venice during the carnival to see people wearing their masks and having fun in these very traditional ways. The other city was, of course, Florence, and the myth of the Renaissance was being birthed right at the end of the 1700s. So, of course, this is with Botticelli, the birth of Venus, and this is Michelangelo's David. Well, of course, the city of Rome, the ruins of Rome, and again, another pictures. This is a group of lords from England. What they used to do? They didn't have cameras. They didn't have Instagrams, TikToks. They have painters. Most of the times, sometimes they brought from the countries, but most of the times they hired when on the spot, and they were hired to paint them nearby, in front of the ruins as an important pictures. Not to say I've been here and I want to make you see where I've gone and been. This is Rome, Piazza Navona. Probably you cannot recognize as it is nowadays. Naples. And then, of course, Naples was important not only because I told you that Pompeii was not yet discovered, but because Naples was the second most important city in Europe in the 1700s after Paris, because of the incredible open mind of his royals. This is Ferdinand and the vice king and the king of Naples. And in 1737, King Charles and King Ferdinand, they opened in 1737 an opera house. And just to say, it's important to say that he was the son of Elisabetta Farnese, one of the most important women of her times, who brought to Naples the important archaeological and painting collection now are the core parts of the Museo Nazionale Archeologico and Capodimonte Museum, and that everything happened during the 1700s, the age of the Grand Tour. This is the Opera House in Naples, and this is the royal balcony. This beautiful found a beautiful painting right at the center of it. Alessandro Scarlatti, now you mentioned earlier, who is considered the founder of the Napoleon Schools of Opera. Literary sources, they really had left, these people had left a huge amount of writings. The Grand Tour contained an exact description of the most cities, towns, and remarkable places of Europe, through Holland up to Portugal, 1749. And then, you can see the oldest one. The first one is from 1617, when actually the scholar started the Grand Tour started out. Till the most important book ever written, which is still the basis of most of the speculation on the topic, which is not only the topic, Goethe, Journey to Italy, written between 1786 and 1788. Don't remember if I had here. This is Morrison, the itinerary written by Morrison. And he describes perfectly, look at the city of Rome with all the Roman numbers. No, where is it? See here. And then, because of my expertise, the lady Elizabeth Craven, she was a playwright and an author. And she published, one of the first women ever to publish Republic Publishing Press House, Strawberry Hill Press, because she had traveled in Europe, France, Italy, Austria, Poland, Bulgaria, Russia, Greece, and Turkey. And she wrote this book, A Journey Through the Crimea to Constantinople, the first woman to have done such an incredible journey. And then Edward Gibbon, who describes the fall of the Roman Empire. And this is still the basic starting book for, the reasons why the Roman Empire fell apart. And then Goethe, and this is, just to tie it up to the United States of America, that in Philadelphia there is this sculpture to Goethe, the mastermind of the German people, and I'm sorry, this is Chicago, the Germany of Chicago, 1913. So just to make you see the bonds, and yes, then the bonds between the Grand Tour and the Americans. Last but not the least, Thomas Jefferson made his Grand Tour to Europe, to Italy, where he studied the Palladio, and he brought back to the United States the Palladian style. As such, the capital in Washington, D.C. is modeled after the Palladian villa Thomas Jefferson visited in Italy during his journey. And another thing, just to conclude having fun and then leave the stage to the musicians, Thomas Jefferson, when he came back to the United States, he constructed the macaroni machine because he was had fallen in love with pasta, and he did want to have, he wanted to have pasta in Americas. And so, yes, just to conclude, thank you so much. Well, the first question, since I'm here, and then I leave the stage to Francesco, you were talking of Mozart and so on, the Italian trilogy, and I was thinking to the librettisti, so the importance of the Italian librettisti towards the Mozart music. Thank you.
The libretto is the script of the opera, and was written by Lorenzo da Ponte, who was an Italian literate and who worked constantly with Mozart on these operas.
Are there any questions? Any curiosity you want to ask? La nostra Ella.
You mentioned that these pieces weren't originally arranged for these instruments.
Except for the first one, in which only the cello is, I'm substituting for the cello, let's say.
I was just wondering what the process of making a new arrangement for new instruments is like, and if you did that yourself for this.
So, the writing of the cello and of the bass clarinet is very similar. They both read in bass clef. The only thing that this is a transposition instrument, a transpository instrument. That means that if I play C on my bass clarinet, the actual sound that you hear is B flat. So the only thing that I have to do is actually to raise just the score, and thankfully, we have softwares that do that for us. So. But Mozart would have done it on his own. It would have taken him like 30 seconds because.
Francesco's question.
First of all, thank you so much, because I learned this is amazing. Understanding what's behind, I was being curious. My question is more a general one, and I'm trying to. So music has been produced, now I would say in a massive way. So many, and even today, even more. Why we? I'm not an expert, but the question is why certain pieces became so famous. What makes today? Now we say the hit. So why certain authors and certain pieces became so famous?
Well, if we want to, it's difficult to say it for all the music that has been written. One thing that we can say is that in the first half of the 1800s, a composer, his name, and conductor, his name was Mendelssohn, Felix Mendelssohn Bartholdy. He was the first one to take music that was performed in the past, and he performed it with his orchestra. In his days, he discovered music by Bach that was forgotten, and it's like, I don't know, when I teach in a school, and sometimes I'm talking with my students about songs that I used to listen to, but they say, Mr. Sbardella, that's old, that's very old. No one knows it anymore, right? So it happens that music was forgotten. They didn't have supports, like they didn't have either any, of course, recorder or any CD player that they could use, right? So after music by Mozart was performed 10, 12, maybe 20 times, because maybe the orchestra was on tour, but then it was left. Okay, and Mozart would produce new music, and Haydn would produce new music, right? And so that was the hit of the moment, as we were saying. That was rock music at the time. Mendelssohn takes Bach, music written by Bach in the early 1700s, and performs it, and they see that it's a success, because Bach was known by, of course, by the scholars, by the musicians, but it wasn't known completely to the the audience of his time, of Mendelssohn's time, and so he started the concept of repertoire. Okay, what makes it stick in your head? I think in that what counts a lot in the music of the classical period is the fact that it's based on the clarity of the melodic line. Okay, there was a teacher of mine who said, we were talking about structure in pop music, and we were talking about the chorus of a song, and he says the chorus is the dress. So the chorus is like something, a dress that you see on someone and you don't forget it, and that's more or less what happens with the melodies of Mozart, Beethoven, and Haydn. Did you hear that the beginning of the Divertimento by Mozart resembles pretty much the right, exactly, the Eine kleine Nacht.
That's what I thought. Really
it resembles pretty much that. So you knew it. This is not Eine kleine. Of course, Mozart used to take fragments of his works and he would reuse them. Okay, but generally it's the simplicity of the melody that sticks with you, and that's why they're a big hit. Okay.
This is a very interesting topic. First of all, because art is always not really copy, but they actually look at each other. That is all the base of art, our history, architecture is all about that visual connection, music connection. And this thing of the fortune was because when we set up these, this evening, this performance, I was kind of coming up with ideas, and we were saying I would like them to perform Vivaldi because probably it's the most. It's an Italian brand. Many of my students here, they know about Italian brand made in Italy. But I was reading, and I would like to know more about it. He was forgotten for a long time until 1950s when we have this boom of the made in Italy all over the world.
Well,
so I was wondering,
maybe for the big audiences.
yeah, I mean,
of course,
as a pop, because I mean, somehow Vivaldi is a pop phenomenon, like Mozart a little bit. It's something that even not expert know, maybe because he's. Yeah, I mean, Mozart, Vivaldi, for not expert, it's a tune that probably because, and I'm really thankful because you stressed that point, we are able to remember that motif. And so when that happens, it's pop, belongs to us, you know? So we can sing it, or we can, reproduce,
yes.
Whispering. So it was really interesting because I think that it was a very important phenomenon of art style that after World War II, yes, I mean, in generally speaking, also touching music, like an important author like Vivaldi, for example.
Vivaldi has been always been performed in concert halls. The point, like Laura is saying, is that what happens after World War II? Media. Okay, so not electronic, but analog support becomes very common, and that's why it becomes like also classical music becomes very popular. And this is the same thing for Italian opera as well.
Yeah.
Italian opera became very common after the 50s because they started to really record a lot of operas. So
together with other discipline
Absolutely.
Of Italian, let's say, made in Italy, as many of you know. But that was a very interesting point because nowadays, really, probably it's the most Italian author that everybody, regardless their social background or education, know. So it was a very interesting point about the fortune of art, in this specific case, music. Any other questions?
Talking about opera, I really enjoy opera. And by the way, thank you very much. This is a dream come true for me. I want to ask you, what's the challenge or the difference when you play by yourself or when you play along with an artist? For example, during the opera, there's a person singing. How do you deal with that?
Well, this is a big question. When we play in a small ensemble, so we're doing chamber music, there's like a sort of a silent agreement about what we want to do. We look to each other a lot. We breathe together. We decide what's the best articulation to use. So it's like a common decision. In opera, you don't take any decision because the conductor does everything. Okay. Or the singer. The conductor follows the singers. So I hope this was a very brief answer to your question, but.
Okay.
This might be kind of another big question maybe, but I'm a musician and I was just wondering, what is it about music that for you makes you wake up every day and decide, I want to do music today?
Yes, can you ask me something about Vivaldi? It's easier to answer.
They want to know about you.
What I think is that for most of us, music is something that is so rooted in your soul, and in your habits, and in your routine, that you cannot imagine your life without music. So you do have to make music somehow. I haven't played for a long time. I stopped playing for a long time, but music was always there because I was making music in a different way. I was teaching music, I was conducting. So music is always there. So I always find my way to have music present in my life. And of course, making music by yourself, playing or conducting, is something that really is rewarding. But I think that the fact that we have been studying music since we were little, it becomes something that you cannot live without. So that's what makes us go on. Was it okay? Good, thank you. May I take this opportunity to say that if you are interested in playing a little bit while you're in Rome, we as Officina Filarmonica are open to having you at our rehearsals or concerts if you want to participate. Okay. Yeah. Huh? What do you play? You'll come to the concerts. Okay. Okay. Yeah, we rehearse every Tuesday in Sant'Alessio. It's a basilica next to on the Avington Hill. So, and our next concert is December 15th. Sorry if I'm publicizing this, but I think so. December 15th, we are having this Christmas concert. We're performing Tchaikovsky and Bach. Okay. And it's free entrance. Free entrance. Okay. Yeah, and we perform Gershwin and Piazzolla. Morricone.
Well,
Thank you all. It was wonderful.
thank you very much.
Thank you so much.